Good news this weekend for Republicans who say they want bipartisanship in Washington. We now have some opposition to torture that's bipartisan and some support for closing Guantanamo Bay that's bipartisan. Or we would have that bipartisan agreement if the Republican Party leaders actually respected the opinions of those party icons they claim to respect. Our third story tonight, two popular Republican figures this weekend supporting President Obama over former Republican Vice President Cheney and current Republican Party leader Boss Limbaugh. General David Petraeus, appointed commander of U.S. Central Command by President Bush, has long been extolled by the right wing as the epitome of military and strategic wisdom, never more so than when he advocated for the surge of U.S. troops in Iraq. On Sunday, he was asked about the claim that America's struggle against terrorism is hurt by closing Guantanamo and ending so-called enhanced interrogation techniques.
In your view, does the closing of Gitmo and the abandonment of those techniques complicate the U.S. mission in Iraq, Afghanistan, and in the overall struggle against violent transnational extremist groups, or does it help it?
I think on balance that those moves help it. In fact, I have long been on record as having testified and also in helping write doctrine for interrogation techniques that are completely in line with the Geneva Convention. With respect to Guantanamo, I think that the closure in a responsible manner, obviously one that is certainly being worked out now by the Department of Justice. I talked to the Attorney General the other day. They have a very intensive effort ongoing to determine indeed what to do with the detainees who are left, how to deal with them in a legal way, and if continued incarceration is necessary, again, how to take that forward. But doing that in a responsible manner, I think, sends an important message to the world, as does the commitment of the United States to observe the Geneva Convention when it comes to the treatment of detainees.
Former Bush Secretary of State General Colin Powell also speaking Sunday, also a more popular figure in his party either than Mr. Cheney nor Mr. Limbaugh, also supported Mr. Obama's position over theirs, pointing out that Cheney and Limbaugh are not merely at odds with President Obama, but with both Obama and former President Bush, who stopped using the worst of torture techniques on his own years ago, and who publicly stated numerous times that he too hoped to close Guantanamo Bay. With us now, MSNBC political analyst Jonathan Alter, also, of course, senior editor at Newsweek magazine. Thanks for coming in, John.
Hi, Keith.
General Petraeus, commander of U.S. CENTCOM, says on camera, on the record, that ending torture and closing Gitmo will help the United States. What is the closest thing that the right has to a trump card that's capable of refuting those kind of conclusions from that guy?
Well, maybe Joe Lieberman? I don't know. You know, they don't have anybody, because this is the most respected military commander we've had in our country since Dwight D. Eisenhower and George Marshall. There is nobody in between them, not Norman Schwarzkopf or any of the other military heroes, who approaches General Petraeus' status. Now, he was right, and many of us, including me, were wrong about the surge. It worked. And history will render a positive verdict on him for that. Does he get credibility with the Republican base for the fact that he was so right on that, on these other issues? Of course not, because they will continue to do what's convenient for them.
But there's a question of, the question of credit versus the question of how quickly he would become a target. How much time does he have left? How many more comments like that would he have before they'd start saying, "Well, this is not the Dave Petraeus we knew. This is not the one we trumped up and trotted out in front of the Senate and said, no, you know, do President Bush's bidding"? Well,
it's possible that within the next couple of days, you know, Rush could say, "Well, I don't agree with Petraeus on this," and that they could conceivably turn on him. But the focus here should be on Cheney. What Cheney has done is to lay a trap for Barack Obama. It's quite possible that we will be attacked sometime in the next 8 years. 8 years is a long time to go without any of our many enemies trying to launch some kind of attack on us. At that point, Cheney and his minions will say, "I told you so. If you had done it our way, then we wouldn't have been attacked." That will be their argument. At that point, when they politicize it, which I assure you they will, it's very important for progressives to come back and say, "No, it was you who weakened the United States." As General Petraeus said, it was you, Vice President Cheney, who created a recruiting poster for al-Qaeda with Gitmo and with torture policy that made an attack more likely. But we will, I think, have to fight fire with fire, so to speak, after initially hoping to keep it non-political. You hope after an attack if God forbid there were one, that there would be a non-political response. But the moment at which Cheney politicizes it, and believe me, he will if, God forbid, we're attacked, it's very important to come back with General Petraeus and the other arguments.
I was just going to say, but you have Petraeus, you have Colin Powell, and if you are, I would think, of the top 3 military heroes of the last generation, certainly since the Eisenhower era, those might be the top 3. And you have 2 of the 3 of them who are politically active at this point to some degree, or just active in the military, who are saying, no, this is the right call, and saying it in advance and in full knowledge of the possibilities that you suggest.
Yeah, it is some good ammo on the anti-torture closed Gitmo side of the argument, and it's important that it, I think, be used now to try to get the president out of this trap. That's what even some of his own people are calling it. They believe that Cheney has essentially laid a trap for them, that even though in the head-to-head last week the president was more appealing, he's much more popular than Dick Cheney, but that should we be attacked, they will say, I told you so.
In the interim, though, is there not something? Is the price not too much for the Republican Party to position itself with Dick Cheney as the party waiting for this country to be attacked and hoping to say, I told you so?
That's where they are right now as a party on national security issues. That's not to say that they hope this happens or anything of that kind. You know, they don't want an attack, but they, should there be one, they are positioning themselves to exploit it politically.
Wow, that is a dangerous roll of the dice, especially in the wake of this hypothetical attack that you're talking about. It seems hard to believe that they could get away with it, but we've said that before.
I don't think they will get away with it, because I think our politics have now changed, and I don't think Democrats are as wimpy when it comes to standing up for themselves. Now, their first reaction should be, let's not politicize this.
Right.
I'm not suggesting that progressives go nuclear on this, you know, right after, if, again, God forbid there were an attack, right after that attack. But should they do this, should the Cheney argument be rolled out, and I can't believe it won't be, at that point, the Democrats need to respond in kind with an argument about who's really to blame for weakening our position in the world.
Yeah, two grim options. John Alter, Newsweek and MSNBC, as always. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Keith.